Decoded.
Hey there, knowledge seekers, and welcome to another Book Decoded podcast episode.
Hello. Great to be back.
Today, we're gonna grab our mental pickaxes, maybe, and really dig deep into Tasha Eurich's fantastic book, Shatterproof.
Yeah, it's a really relevant one.
Totally. I mean, ever feel like you're just navigating a world that just keeps throwing curveballs nonstop?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Well, this book isn't just about, dodging them. It's really about fundamentally upgrading how we handle them.
And maybe even grow stronger because of them.
Exactly. You're here listening, probably wanting to get the good stuff fast and deep right.
And that's the plan. We've got actionable insights, some surprising facts lined up.
And forget just bouncing back. We are talking about making a real leap forward.
Absolutely. And what's so striking about Shatterproof is, well, how timely it feels. Chapter 1 really sets the stage, talking about this deep exhaustion so many of us feel.
Yeah, the constant change.
Right. We're facing these huge phase transition events, she calls them, like massive shifts in how we live, how we work.
And they're layered, aren't they?
Layered on top of what she terms compound extremes. It just feels like one crisis rolls right into the next.
Yeah.
Steady state feels like a distant memory.
Okay, let's dig into that feeling then, this chaos era. Eurich points out some really fundamental human tendencies that make all this upheaval so draining.
Our evolutionary design flaws, yeah.
First one, bad is bigger than good. It's like our brains are Velcro for the bad stuff and, Teflon for the good.
That's a great way to put it. It connects to the heliotropic effect, how plants turn to the sun. We're naturally drawn to the positive. But our brains have this incredibly strong negativity bias. Think about it. One piece of criticism can stick with you for days, right?
Oh, yeah. Wipes out 10 compliments sometimes.
Exactly. It's probably an old survival thing, keeping us alert to danger. But now, in this always-on world, it just keeps us perpetually kind of stressed.
So being mindful, like actively looking for the good stuff, is maybe more important than we think.
It's a crucial skill, definitely.
Okay, then there's the certainty over comfort effect. This one really stopped me. The idea that we'd almost rather know something bad is coming than just live with the maybe.
It sounds odd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the research she highlights is fascinating, like that study with electric shocks.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, people actually showed higher stress levels physically measured when they had a 50-50 chance of getting a shock compared to when they knew for sure they were going to get one.
Wow. So the not knowing is worse than the known bad thing.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Uncertainty itself might be one of our most, primal stressors. Makes you think how much energy we waste just worrying about potential negatives.
Which leads right into the third flaw, our outdated survival systems. The classic fight or flight.
Right. Saved our ancestors from tigers, probably.
But not so helpful with email overload or a looming deadline, huh?
Not really. Our amygdala, the fear center in the brain, and our nervous system, they fire up like it's life or death.
Even when it's just like, stand from accounting asking for a report again.
Exactly. And being in that constant state of alert, well, it takes a massive toll over time. We're running old software in a completely new world. No wonder we feel the pressure.
Okay, so given all that, Eurich says we need to move beyond just being resilient, in the way we usually think about it anyway.
Yeah, because usually resilience means bouncing back.
Right.
Getting back to where you were before the tough thing happened.
That's the common idea.
But her research found something else. While, yes, many people do bounce back, there's this other sort of smaller group who actually experience what she calls growing forward. They don't just get back to baseline. They emerge stronger, maybe with more purpose, deeper connections.
Okay, that's the goal. That sounds like Shatterproof.
That's exactly what the book is about, how to become part of that group.
And on the way, she kind of busts some common myths about resilience. First one, that it's just about getting back to normal.
Right. And she looks at the evidence. Resilience definitely helps us cope and adapt, no question. But it rarely leads to, major personal growth. Yeah, they analyzed loads of research papers on resilience. Only a tiny fraction even suggested it led to higher functioning. And even those were mostly, based on anecdotes, not hard data.
So traditional resilience is more about just getting back on your feet, not necessarily climbing higher?
Pretty much. The goal is often just getting back to normal.
Right.
So if you're aiming for more than just getting by, this is a really key thing to understand.
Okay. Myth 2. Resilience is a choice. Resilience is a muscle. Just work it harder.
Yeah. That metaphor is everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the research It's a bit more complicated.
How so?
Well, studies on things like positive thinking exercises, resilience training, they often show pretty limited long-term impact.
Oh,
And sometimes they can even be harmful. Might actually make mental health worse for some people.
wow. Why?
Maybe it adds pressure. Like if you're not bouncing back fast, you feel like you're failing at being resilient too.
Yeah, I can see that. Like that story about Jan and her son's doctor.
Exactly. She was made to feel like she wasn't being a resilient enough parent, adding guilt on top of everything else. It ignores how little control we sometimes have.
Okay, and the third big myth, Nietzsche. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Sounds great, but
But there's not much actual science behind it. In fact, it might be the opposite.
how?
People who experience the most chronic stress often have fewer resilience resources left. It's like resilience is finite, it can get used up.
Ah, okay.
Think about Simranjeet Singh's story being told his work stress should be easy because he'd face racism. It completely dismisses the cumulative toll.
Yeah, that's really invalidating, especially for marginalized groups.
Totally. And, kind of ironic, Nietzsche himself had a major breakdown not long after he wrote that famous line.
Oof. So maybe the takeaway is acknowledging limits isn't weakness. It's actually smart.
That's a really good way to put it. Pushing relentlessly isn't always the answer.
So if that old grit and bear it resilience has limits, she talks about hitting a resilience ceiling.
Yeah, it's like we all have a certain capacity for just pushing through, and in this chaos era, we might be hitting it more often.
That strategy is reaching its breaking point.
Seems like it. She mentions a stat from a big accounting firm. Almost half their employees said their usual coping tools weren't working as well anymore.
Half. That's huge.
It really is. And when you hit that ceiling, trying harder isn't the answer. The key is often doing less, releasing pressure.
She has a quiz for that online, right? The resilient ceiling quiz.
Yep, if people are curious to explore their own potential ceiling, it's out there.
And sometimes we look tough on the outside, but it's just superficial, skin-deep resilience. Like Berton's bike accident story.
Oh, that's such a powerful example. He grew up feeling he had to be tough, self-reliant.
So even when he was hurt.
He put on a brave face, pretended he was fine, didn't ask for help he clearly needed. That outward show just masked his struggle and added more stress.
A good reminder that looking resilient isn't the same as being well.
Exactly. It can come at a real cost.
Okay, so if traditional resilience isn't the whole story, Shatterproof gives us a different roadmap. Step 1 is probe your pain.
This is a big mental shift. Seeing pain not as failure or something to run from, but as data, valuable information.
Data? How?
She talks about the pain paradox, trying to ignore or suppress your pain. It actually just makes it stick around longer. It prolongs the suffering.
Things like toxic positivity get in the way, or just freezing up.
Definitely. That pressure to be always upbeat or just shutting down emotionally both disconnect you from what your pain is trying to tell you.
And she uses her own experience, right? After that wedding weekend.
Yeah, that feeling words brainstorm. She felt awful after this intense weekend, and instead of brushing it off, she dug in.
What did she find?
By actually naming the feelings, confusion, fear, feeling unheard, she realized they weren't random. They were signals that something was off, specifically a loss of control.
So paying attention, even to small, uncomfortable feelings, can unlock real insights.
Incredibly insightful, yes. Don't
Yeah.
dismiss them.
Okay, step 2. Trace your triggers. Understanding what pushes your buttons.
And this connects back to our core psychological needs.
Yeah.
She focuses on 3 from self-determination theory: confidence, choice, and connection.
Confidence, choice, connection. Okay.
When these fundamental needs aren't met, that's when you're most vulnerable to triggers.
So feeling dismissed hits your confidence.
Exactly. Being micromanaged hits your sense of choice. Feeling excluded hits your need for connection. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it maps pretty clearly.
And crucially, it's not just the objective event, it's your interpretation.
Like the Ross and Carson example at work. What one person shrugs off.
Another person might see as a major slight. Your history, your perspective, that's what determines if something feels like a trigger to you. Subjectivity matters.
Okay. Then step 3 is spot your shadows. These are shadow goals, quick fixes for unmet needs.
Kind of. They're these coping strategies we develop, like constantly needing to prove ourselves, prove her, or building walls to protect ourselves or protect her, or obsessively trying to prevent bad things, prevent her.
They sound exhausting.
They are. And they're usually driven by extrinsic things needing validation, avoiding criticism. They give a temporary boost, maybe, but they don't actually satisfy those core needs for confidence, choice, connection.
And they can harm well-being long-term.
Definitely. Think of Nathan Chen at the Olympics, that intense external pressure to win, to prove his confidence with a gold medal. It seemed to undermine him.
So the goal is to spot when you're chasing that external fix instead of building something internal.
Precisely. Intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic.
And step 4, briefly, is pick your pivots, setting shatterproof goals instead.
Exactly. These are new, healthier paths to meet those core needs. Goals focused on making yourself genuinely better, not just looking better.
Like learning a skill for confidence.
Yes, or making authentic choices that align with your values for autonomy, or investing in relationships to build connection.
So making things better for yourself, making authentic choices, making things better for others.
Those are the core ideas. Isabel's story, choosing agency after betrayal, is a great example of a shatterproof goal for reclaiming choice.
Okay, let's dive a bit deeper into crafting these needs, starting with confidence, which is in part 3. It's about feeling you're doing well and getting better.
That combination is key. It's not just about present capability, but also that sense of progress, of growth.
Because you can be successful on paper, but still feel like a fraud inside.
Oh, absolutely. She uses Stephanie from Dinner for Schmucks, or even Josh Groban, as examples of people achieving huge external success, but still battling deep self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is real.
And what triggers hits to confidence?
Common ones include unrealistic expectations
Mm.
from self or others, feeling stuck in a rut, dealing with chaos, facing criticism, obviously, and that constant comparison trap.
Okay, so how do we build real confidence? She has a tool, right? The reflected best self exercise.
The RBS, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really neat exercise. Basically, you ask people who know you well from different parts of your life.
Friends, family, colleagues.
Right. You ask them for specific examples of times they saw you at your absolute best, performing well, making a difference, whatever.
And then you look for themes in what they send back.
Exactly. It helps you see your strengths through others' eyes.
Yeah.
You might uncover strengths you downplay or didn't even recognize.
Like Mark, the army leader.
Yeah, he worried his directness was harsh, but people saw it as compassionate honesty. It reframed a perceived weakness into a strength. Appendix F has the full how-to.
And when setbacks happen, like Juan the graphic designer.
It's about shifting the focus. Juan saw critical feedback not as proof he wasn't good enough, but as valuable data to help him master his craft. That growth mindset is crucial for confidence.
Okay, let's move to crafting choice, that basic human need for autonomy.
It's so fundamental. And choice triggers exist on a spectrum, right?
Right.
From feeling totally powerless to just feeling subtly pressured internally or externally.
The Otpor story in Serbia was amazing here, how they fostered agency even under oppression.
Yeah, it shows the power of choice support.
Yeah.
Validating people's feelings, giving them information, emphasizing even small actions they can take.
Like the smiling barrel, a symbolic act of resistance.
Exactly. It gave people a tiny bit of agency. Even getting arrested became a badge of honor for a chosen risk. It shows that even small choices matter.
And for everyday overwhelm, when you feel like you've lost agency, there's the 222 tool.
Right. It's a structured timeout. 2 minutes for immediate needs, 2 hours to step back and get perspective, 2 days to really decompress and reset.
Eurich used it herself.
Yeah, after a disappointment. It's about consciously injecting small choices back into the situation when you feel powerless.
And choice triggers can be internal too, right? Like Scott over-identifying with his career. I imagine many listeners might relate to that one.
Oh, for sure. When your job becomes your entire identity, it's risky. Burnout, lower well-being, loneliness.
And work setbacks feel like personal failures.
Totally. Scott realized he needed to consciously build a more balanced identity. Part of that was learning the power of saying no to things that didn't truly align. Appendix A talks more about that.
Okay, finally, crafting connection. That deep need for love, belonging.
And avoiding loneliness, yeah. Triggers here are often about rejection, cruelty, betrayal, things that wound that sense of belonging.
Connection has 2 parts, belonging and depth.
That's how Eurich frames it. Belonging comes from frequent positive interactions. Relationship depth is about trust, intimacy, reciprocity. And she talks about pair bonds, those really deep core connections.
Her own story about the friend canceling plans, the cat incident, was revealing.
Yeah, a seemingly small thing triggered these deep childhood feelings of being excluded.
Wow.
It shows how potent these connection wounds can be, how the past echoes.
She also talks about backers versus barnacles in our lives.
Right. Who lifts you up, especially in tough times, backers, versus who drags you down, barnacles. Hard times are often a litmus test for relationships.
And there are shadow habits here too, like bad guys bias.
Yeah, or offense rumination. Constantly demonizing people who hurt you or replaying slights over and over. Appendix J touches on those. They keep you stuck.
But connection can be found in many ways. Helen's story about spirituality.
That was beautiful. Finding connection to something larger than herself gave her profound meaning and freedom from unhealthy relationship expectations. It doesn't have to be traditional relationships.
So connecting to community, nature, spirituality, those all count.
Absolutely. It enhances well-being and that sense of being part of something.
Which brings us toward the end, this idea of building a truly shatterproof life. Mama Shu's story is just incredible.
Transforming such profound grief into community action. Avalon Village is the ultimate example of growing forward.
It really embodies the whole message, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Building a shatterproof life isn't about dodging pain. It's about understanding your own internal world, the pain, triggers, shadows, and then consciously, intentionally crafting confidence, choice, and connection.
It's a process, not a destination.
Exactly. Ongoing self-awareness, adaptation, Eurich's own journey, her coaching, it all comes from living these principles.
Well, this has been a fantastic exploration of Shatterproof. Thanks so much for joining us on this Book Decoded episode.
My pleasure. We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. From, the limits of just bouncing back to really understanding our core needs and the power we have to proactively build a life around confidence, choice, and real connection.
And maybe, as listeners go about their day, just take a moment. Reflect on what causes you pain, what your triggers are. Maybe even spot a shadow goal or two you might be chasing.
Yeah, definitely check out the reflected best self exercise details in Appendix F of the book if that sparked your interest.
And maybe the resilient ceiling quiz online, too. Could be insightful.
And we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Consider that the challenges you're facing right now, maybe they aren't just tests of your strength.
Maybe they're actually invitations. Invitations to intentionally redesign how you thrive.
Love that. A great place to wrap up. Until our next exploration, everyone, keep those minds open and keep decoding your world.